There is an oft-repeated story about the pump that at some stage in the Victorian era it became the source of a dreadful local calamity. Nobody seems to be quite sure exactly when this calamity actually occurred. Some websites say that it was in the 1860s, others date it to the 1870s, but all agree that hundreds, if not thousands of people died in the so-called Aldgate Pump epidemic when an outbreak of cholera was traced to the water from the pump. Several websites even go so far as to make the startling claim that, as a result of the epidemic, the pump became known as the Pump of Death. The chilling story behind the epidemic that killed thousands in East London who all drank water from one place runs the dramatic headline above one article on the Aldgate Pump epidemic. It must have been a truly traumatic experience for those who had to live through it. The only problem is, there never was an Aldgate Pump epidemic. The whole calamity is an internet myth resulting from one website mixing the Aldgate Pump up with the Broad Street Pump in Soho, which did cause a cholera epidemic in 1854, and other websites simply copying the story. Even that vast repository of internet knowledge, Wikipedia, finds itself stumped on the subject. Its entry on the Aldgate Pump mentions the fact that several hundred people died in what became known as the Aldgate Pump epidemic. It even highlights it, but when you click on the link, up pops the message, Wikipedia does not have an article with this exact name. Further delving brings up the statement that the Aldgate Pump epidemic article, like the epidemic itself, does not exist. That is not to say that there wasn't a cholera epidemic in London around this time. Indeed, in 1866 the fourth cholera pandemic swept across Europe, and the first cases of it were reported in London at the end of June that year. By the end of July, a surge in cases was causing grave concern. According to the Carlow Post, in its edition of Saturday the 28th of July, of 846 fatal cases in the metropolis, 308 had occurred in the eastern districts. On Thursday the 2nd of August, the Fife Herald reported that deplorable ravages are being made by cholera in the district of Whitechapel, London. At the end of some of the streets in which the disease has gained most head, a black flag is hung that there might be as little traffic as possible through them, and that people may be warned of the infection. Something, it appeared, was very amiss with the water supply there. However, epidemiologist William Farr traced the source of the outbreak to the River Lee, from which the East London Water Company drew its supply, and it was noted that the greatest number of fatal cases have occurred adjacent to its banks. Somewhat miffed at the impugnation of his company's water, the secretary of the East London Water Company wrote to the newspapers claiming that their water was pure and that any pollution must be coming from the surroundings of the cisterns from which the residents were drawing their water. As the outbreak began to abate towards the end of August, the medical journal, The Lancet, set up a commission to investigate the source of the outbreak in the East End of London. Its findings were not exactly music to the ears of the water company's directors, nor, for that matter, for those of the East Enders who depended on the company for their water supply. It turned out that the sewage from Hertford, 32 miles to the north of East London, was being discharged into the River Lee. Carried by the current, it drifted past Ware, proving highly offensive to its citizens, although their offence didn't stop them pumping their sewage into the river, where it continued its journey towards the eastern border of London. As the committee reported, nearly the whole of Hertfordshire, it will be seen, besides the western border of Essex, drains into the River Lee, which receives the excrementitious matters from 150,000 to 200,000 persons before it reaches Enfield, below which is taken the supply of drinking water for the east of London. Several newspapers observed that the surprise wasn't that 5,000 EastEnders had died as a result of drinking the contaminated river water, but rather that the death toll hadn't been considerably higher. It certainly makes you glad to live in the 21st century when private water companies wouldn't dream of discharging vast quantities of raw sewage into our rivers, streams, lakes and seas. There can be no doubt that some of the cholera cases could be attributed to people drinking water from the city's pumps, but it is noticeable that at no stage was the Aldgate Pump singled out as the main contributor to the epidemic.